Hey guys, welcome back to Hollow Auto Diagnostics. Today we're doing another one in the field. Drove 3 hours to get here. Everyone's favorite, South Main Auto Repair. Got cars lined up to the road here. And the reason I'm here is that yesterday Eric and I went to this really cool seminar on ignition waveforms. It was put on by CarQuest Technical Institute. The lecturer was John Gillespie, who is actually located close to Pittsburgh, Scanner Danner area. And this 4-hour lecture, all we did was look at ignition waveforms. Good ones, bad ones, going through case studies. I learned a lot, and it so happens here that Eric has a case study, 1990 Ford F-250 with the big block 7.5 liter, and it has a potential ignition misfire. It runs rough when it's cold and damp. So what better way to put our newly learned information to the test than do a real case study. So we'll hook up our Veris ignition scope and look at our known good, known bad waveforms and see if we can track this down using the scope. So right now, the engine is stone cold. What we want to do is hook up our ignition scope and see if it acts up, try to recreate the problem. So again, let's set up the hookups here. So distributor system, ignition coil lives right back here, and it has an externally mounted ignition module, TFI, which lives right in the corner down here. That guy with the heat sinks. So apparently they, it's better than the Chevy design where the ignition module lives inside the distributor and gets all hot up here. So anyways, first we need to see where these plug wires go and the firing order. So this center lead obviously comes from our ignition coil. In that one, we have our secondary pickup, capacitive pickup, hooked up to the coil wire, channel 1. Alright. And then we also need a sync signal, and that will take from cylinder number 1 right here, so this probe, and this end hooks into the auxiliary port right up here. It just should snap right in. There's something wrong. I see the snap-on truck is here. Maybe Eric's gonna get his Veris back one of these days. So let's go through the setup. Sorry about the glare, but we'll deal with it. Scope multimeter, ignition scope, and we want to do, so there's several options here: parade, single cylinder, raster, superimposed. We'll go over what those mean. So let's start with the parade. And you can see here we have cylinders 1 through 6, but this is a V8, so we need to change our settings here. So let's go to setup, ignition, and here first we pick how many cylinders we have, so 8 cylinders. Okay, and now the firing order, and the component test meter did not have the firing order in it, so I just looked at the distributor and started with the number 1 plug wire, and from there you can go around and see where each lead goes. And the cylinders here, Ford labels them 1 through 4 and then 5 through 8 on bank 2. So here's the firing order. So now we need to specify that's 187 26, no, see, 187 36 36 245. It's not even listed in here. Let me double check that firing order. Well, this is the closest firing order they had in the list, but it's really irrelevant. It's just to make it easier to pinpoint which cylinder is which. So this firing order almost matches, except for 5 and 2 are reversed. So we have 2 and 5, and the Verus is 5 and 2. So basically, if we see a misfire on number 5, it will actually be number 2. No big deal. So we got it all hooked up, ready to rock. And it's all set. We just need to start the truck. So let's see what the waveforms look like. All right, seeing some waveforms. Let's drop the scale down. Kind of shaky. Can we see anything obvious? Is there an odd man out? Sorry about the glare. How about that? So we need to load the system up, do a snap throttle test. Do a big gulp of air here. Pause it. Play it back. Basically, I'm going to look at the waveforms and see if we can find anything abnormal. Alright, so played around with the scope. Then we got the good old-fashioned spray bottle out, right, Eric? Never fails. Sprayed down the whole ignition system.
Soaked it.
Soaked it.
That's right, we soaked it.
yeah, it was soaked. All the plug wires, both banks.
Coil.
Then we soaked the coil over here. We soaked the ignition module. Soaked the cap and rotor.
And then we soaked the inside of the cap and rotor.
Yep, we simulated that morning dew scenario.
Little mist.
A little mist there, yep.
So we gave it a mist. And yeah, I would consider it heavy saturation. We heavily saturated the inside of the coil, or the inside of the cap, the outside. When you can see the puddle down here still.
Yeah, that's pretty saturated.
Gosh.
Fired it up and still ran like a top, right?
Yeah.
Snap throttle, no bucking, no hesitations, no.
No, nothing. I never felt a single misfire.
Nope, we didn't get zapped.
Yeah, we pulled one wire off to create an open to see what a misfire felt like, just to make sure that fish bite scenario you could tell. Because sometimes with a V8, dead, lower compression, dead misses. Sometimes it can be kind of masked.
It's hard to
by the rotating mass.
Feel it.
But yeah, this was pretty, boom, boom, boom. You could feel it if it was open or short.
For sure.
Short, I feel. I suspect. But.
So what's the next step here?
Well, that would lead me to think it's probably not secondary ignition. I guess more quiz the customer a little bit.
So I guess we got to get more info from the customer. Exactly when this happens. Is it a cold morning only? Does it have to be raining?
If it's intermittent, or if it's only like every morning, or
right. So it still has a brain. It's fuel injected.
Yeah.
So it could be potentially maybe a bad coolant temp sensor. It's overfueling or something.
Vacuum leak. Or
not enough fuel. So we could, it does have a test port here, and we have the right adapter for the Verus. So maybe pull some codes, but these systems, they're very primitive, so you wouldn't expect.
I think they even get codes out of these older ones. It's key on engine off test, key on engine running test.
Now, do these give live data, or is it only key on engine run, engine off
I can't
test?
Remember. This is almost back.
Yeah, it's not like a GM or a Chrysler.
Yeah, I do know they do. These old ones don't have the the memory code function.
That's right.
I don't believe.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's the next step. Call the customer up.
Yep.
And go from there.
Give them a buzz.
Alright, we're doing our key on, engine off self-test here. Let's see what we come up with. Turn key on, do not start engine. Alright. Just checking all the relays and all that good stuff, so we have no live data. Let's see, park neutral position, clutch switch circuit failure, don't care about that. And continuous memory codes, system pass. No issues there. Alright, let's do key on engine run self-test. Let's see, cycle the key. Continue. Start engine, allow to reach normal operating temp. Continue. Code 10, snap throttle. Operator error, throttle not snapped. Yeah, not much help here. So, gotta talk to the customer now. Alright, so Eric called the customer and we got a little more details on what's going on. So,
yeah. Well,
what are the symptoms?
Evidently, when it starts up cold, you know, cold morning start occasionally.
Okay.
It'll start it. Evidently, the RPMs will go up to 1200 or so. Mm-hmm. And then he'll put it in gear.
Right.
When he does that, supposedly it kind of stumbles and it creates this misfire, almost like it wants to stall. Then it kind of picks back up, I guess. And it happens on occasion. I guess quite intermittently. So. But
when he gets up and drives it, then there's no power complaints or anything.
It doesn't sound like there's any kind of fish biting, skipping.
Okay, so we might have been barking up the wrong tree there.
Yeah, a very good possibility. And I see we got
some maintenance history.
Yeah, we got like 50,000 miles on it since the last tune-up.
That's not bad.
Yeah, it's all OEM stuff was used last time. We've heavily saturated the wires.
Yep.
Cap rotor. I see we did use some OEM Motorcraft spark plugs.
Yep, only the best.
So with 50,000 miles on them, if they are a resistor type spark plug, which I assume they probably are at $3.95. I don't know. You hate to put a part in something.
Yeah.
Without seeing it, but
we can do a quick visual inspection.
Yeah, quick visual inspection.
Pop it out, see.
Might yank a wire out and see what it looks like.
Exactly.
It could be as simple as throwing some, throwing a couple plugs in it, or throwing a set of plugs.
Yeah,
in
I think cabin rotor looks okay, and
I can't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, we
soaked it with oil or soaked it with water. We soaked the.
Yeah.
Without recreating the symptom, I guess it'd be visual inspection. Look at the plugs. Could be time. If you got excessive gap and wear on it.
Did you set his ignition timing when you did the tune-up?
When I did this, I can tell you.
Just curious.
Well, it wasn't
charged. It was idle speed.
Yeah. So yeah, it would have been because it was charged for. Yeah, timing set at 10 degrees.
Okay.
I would have put what I did there. Yeah, replace rotor, check ignition timing, and what I set it at. Yeah, I would have pulled the pip and done that at that time. So. Yep.
That's that for this one, I guess.
That's it.
Can't recreate the problem.
No, if you can't recreate the problem, I mean, you can't recreate the problem.
Yeah,
that's all there is to it. Bottom line.
All right. Well.
Yep.
I guess that's it for this video. Might not be too exciting, but at least we got the scope out, played around with it, with the secondary ignition, and maybe next time we'll get a better case study.
Yeah.
When we actually have a secondary ignition problem.
Yeah. I was really hoping it would be something sweet.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's it for this one. Short and sweet.
Yep.
All right, Eric.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Just doing a real quick one here in the field. 91 Honda Accord, 2.2 liter. We have a crank, no start, no spark situation. Now the way you can check for no spark, pop one of these plug wires off, hold your test light here, crank it. If you got no spark, then you know. So what do we check next? My favorite test on these, if you have a scope obviously, is to do a coil ramp test on the primary side of the ignition coil, and also a second channel you can put on the neighboring wire. So let's see here, it's black and yellow is the feed into the distributor, and then this blue, I think it's a solid blue wire, that is the pickup for the tachometer, and it's actually tied into the control side of the ignition coil. So that's our voltage trace. So two channels here. Now, you crank it over, we have humps, so we know it's not a broken timing belt. And now we look at the values here. So the yellow trace is our current. So you can see it's going up to 7.5 amps, which is fine. But if we zoom in, look at that current ramp. That is a straight up line right there, and then it starts to curve around. That's a classic view of a shorted secondary on the ignition coil. So we're basically done here, and this literally takes 2 minutes, and we can confidently say we have a shorted secondary in the ignition coil, so it needs a new ignition coil, and that's it. Let's look at our green trace here. This is interesting too. So when the transistor turns on, see the voltage, here's battery voltage. You know, when cranking it's a little low, like 9 volts, but it drops to close to 0. And then here, see what happens is that igniter in there is actually limiting the current. It raises the voltage, so we top out at 7.5 amps to avoid burning anything up. So on a good coil, you would see the ramp start here, turn on oscillations, nice linear increase. Here, shorted secondary winding, classic issue. And if we had a spark on the decay, we would actually see the firing line, and so it'd be 1 to 2 milliseconds long. Here we just see, boom, decrease, back down to battery voltage. So that's it, just a quick one. Maybe I'll help someone out with one of these old Hondas, no spark situation. Otherwise, if you don't have a scope, you could still see, well, if you don't have a scope, then I guess you could use some old school methods here, but this is the quickest way I know, and it's 100% guaranteed. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Alright, new ignition coil is installed. Moment of truth. Woohoo! That was knocking. Sweet! Let's get an after shot of the repair, the same waveform. Alright, car's running. Got the scope hooked up the same way, looking at the same 2 traces. So now we can set up a trigger to keep this thing from walking on us. Let's do a trigger on the current waveform. We can zoom in. So that is a nice looking pattern. You'll note that before we had a current limiting event here. Not anymore. Now the current is going up all the way to the 5 amps, so the igniter doesn't need to limit the current anymore. And if you look at our voltage waveform, let's drop that down. So if we trigger off the voltage waveform now, trigger right here. You can see our spark line. Before we just had a decay. Now you can see the spark line. So no issues there. So I'm gonna save these, and he'll be a known good and a known bad. So another satisfied customer, right?
Ivan does a good job.
All right. We'll put this on YouTube, and I'll give him the link. You'll see his car featured on my channel. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Catch you next time.